Welcome to a journey of understanding the biblical perspective of abundance. In the Bible, the term abundance is often used to describe overwhelming fullness or plenty. However, it's important to note that biblical abundance goes far beyond just material wealth or possessions. It's about experiencing God's goodness and blessings in every facet of our lives. When we talk about abundance from a biblical perspective, we refer to a life that's rich in fulfillment, joy, and peace. It's about spiritual richness, emotional well-being, and relational fulfillment. It's about living in the fullness of God's love and provision, not just in some areas, but in every area of our lives. To support this narrative, let's look at some Bible verses. In John 10:10, Jesus says, "I have come that they may have life, and have it to the full." This verse highlights that Jesus didn't just come to give us life, but life in abundance. This abundance is not just about living, but living fully and joyfully in the love and provision of God. In another verse, 2 Corinthians 9:8, we see, "And God is able to bless you abundantly, so that in all things at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work." This verse underscores that God's abundance isn't just about having our needs met, but also being equipped to do good works and make a meaningful impact in the world. Abundance, as described in the Bible, is therefore a holistic concept. It is not merely about material prosperity, but it encompasses spiritual richness, emotional well-being, and relational fulfillment. It's about living a life that is overflowing with God's goodness, blessings, and provision. Abundance, therefore, is a holistic concept that God desires for each one of us. It's not just about having, but about living fully, joyfully, and purposefully in the love and provision of God. Now let's dive into the Bible and uncover stories that illustrate the concept of abundance. Our first story takes us to the time of Elijah, a prophet who lived in a time of drought and famine. The tale is told in 1 Kings 17. Elijah, following God's direction, encounters a widow gathering sticks in the town of Zarephath. The widow, preparing to make a final meal for her and her son before they succumb to starvation, is asked by Elijah to first make a small loaf of bread for him. Despite her dire circumstances, she obeys and finds that her jar of flour and jug of oil never run out, providing enough for her, her son, and Elijah for the duration of the famine. This story beautifully illustrates how God's abundance can manifest even in scarcity when we trust and obey Him. Next, we turn to the New Testament to the account of Jesus feeding a multitude with just 5 loaves and 2 fish. As told in Matthew 14, a large crowd had gathered to hear Jesus speak. As evening approached, the disciples suggested sending the crowd away to buy food. But Jesus had another plan. He took the 5 loaves and 2 fish, looked up to heaven, gave thanks, and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. Remarkably, all were fed, and 12 baskets of leftovers were collected. This miracle showcases Jesus' power to multiply our resources and provide more than we could ever anticipate. Both of these stories, one from the Old Testament and one from the New, demonstrate God's ability to provide abundantly, even in seemingly impossible situations. They remind us that God's abundance is not constrained by human limitations or circumstances. It's about trusting in God's provision, having faith in His promises, and understanding that His ways are higher than ours. In the end, living in abundance is not about having more, but about trusting more, believing more, and experiencing more of God's love and provision. These stories reveal God's ability to provide abundantly, even in seemingly impossible situations. But what does living in abundance look like in our everyday lives? Well, let's consider the story of a school teacher named Anna. Now, Anna isn't a millionaire, nor does she live in a mansion. She lives in a modest apartment, drives a used car, and lives paycheck to paycheck. But Anna is rich in ways that surpass material wealth. Every day, Anna wakes up with a heart full of gratitude. She thanks God for her life, her health, her job, and the opportunity to make a difference in the lives of her students. She's learned to find contentment in her circumstances, just like the Bible instructs in 1 Thessalonians 5:18. Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. Anna also trusts in God's provision. She doesn't worry about her financial status or what she lacks. Instead, she relies on God's promise in Philippians 4:19. And my God will meet all your needs according to the riches of His glory in Christ Jesus. Living in abundance for Anna means sharing her blessings with others. She regularly volunteers at a local homeless shelter and donates a portion of her paycheck to charity. She lives out 1 Timothy 6:18. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. She is diligent and faithful in her work, believing in Colossians 3:23, "Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters." And above all, Anna prioritizes seeking God's kingdom and righteousness, living out Matthew 6:33. "But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well." Living in abundance, then, isn't about accumulating wealth or possessions. It's about cultivating a mindset of gratitude, contentment, and trust in God's provision. It's about being generous, sharing our blessings with others, and remaining faithful and diligent in our work. It's about seeking God's kingdom first and trusting that He will take care of the rest. Living in abundance, then, is about recognizing and embracing God's blessings in every situation. How then do we cultivate this mindset of abundance? This question is vital in understanding God's desire for us to live in abundance. It's not only about material wealth, but a holistic well-being encompassing spiritual, emotional, physical, and relational aspects. Here, we will explore 5 key principles that guide us towards this abundant life. Firstly, we cultivate an attitude of gratitude and contentment. This means appreciating what we have and finding satisfaction in every circumstance. As the book of 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 18 states, "Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." Secondly, we embrace the principle of trusting God's provision. Trusting that God will meet our needs according to His riches is essential. This principle is beautifully expressed in Philippians chapter 4, verse 19. "And my God will meet all your needs according to the riches of His glory in Christ Jesus." Our third principle is generosity and sharing. We are called to live generously, sharing our blessings with others. This is emphasized in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 18. "Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share." The fourth principle involves faithfulness and diligence. We are to remain faithful and diligent in our work, knowing that our efforts are not in vain. As Colossians chapter 3, verse 23 reminds us, "Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters." Lastly, we prioritize seeking God's kingdom, knowing that all other things will be added unto us when we prioritize God's kingdom and righteousness. This principle is found in Matthew chapter 6, verse 33. "But seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well." These principles guide us towards a life of abundance as God intends. They reflect His love and glory to the world, aligning us with His divine purpose. Living in abundance is about experiencing God's goodness and blessings in every area of our lives. Living in abundance is a journey, not a destination. As we wrap up today's discussion, let's take a moment to reflect on the key takeaways. We've explored the concept of abundance as described in the Bible, beyond the confines of material wealth and possessions. It's about cultivating a mindset of gratitude, contentment, and trust in God's provision in all aspects of life. We delved into biblical stories that illustrate this principle, from Elijah and the widow of Zarephath to Jesus feeding thousands with 5 loaves and 2 fish. These stories aren't just historical accounts. They're timeless lessons of trust, generosity, and God's provision. In today's context, living in abundance can be as simple and relatable as being grateful for a meal, a safe home, or the company of loved ones. It's about recognizing and appreciating the blessings present in our everyday lives, however modest they may seem. We've also discussed 5 guiding principles of living in abundance, each accompanied by a corresponding Bible verse. Cultivating gratitude and contentment in every circumstance, trusting in God's promise to provide, living generously, remaining faithful and diligent in our work, and prioritizing seeking God's kingdom. These principles serve as a roadmap to living a life of abundance, reflecting God's love and glory in the world. Remember, abundance is not merely about material prosperity, but encompasses spiritual richness, emotional well-being, and relational fulfillment. It's about experiencing God's goodness and blessings in every area of our lives. So let's embark on this journey together, cultivating an attitude of abundance, trusting in God's provision, and sharing our blessings with others. We invite you to join us in this exploration of living in abundance. Join us on this journey towards living in abundance. Subscribe to our channel, share this video with your loved ones, and let's reflect God's love and glory together.